My boss invited me to her home for a work discussion, but somewhere between the quiet confessions and the way she looked at me in the lamplight, I realized it wasn't ambition pulling me there, it was her. I never imagined a single phone notification could change the way my heart beat. But when my screen lit up with her name, Elena, my boss, the woman who moved through the world with quiet power and an impossible kind of grace, I felt something tighten in me. Even before I opened the message. Can you stop by my office at 7? I'd like to discuss your future here. It sounded professional. It was professional. And yet, I sat there for a few seconds, staring at the words, feeling something warm bloom in my chest. People didn't usually notice me in the office, not really. I worked hard, stayed late, learned fast. But in a world of louder voices and older experience, I was used to blending in. Except with her. Elena saw things, not just mistakes, not just results, but effort, intention, potential. She had that kind of presence that made you straighten your back a little, not because she demanded it, but because excellence felt natural around her. At 7 sharp, I stood outside her office door. The corridor was empty. Lights dimmed for the night, the building settling into its evening hush. Through the glass, I could see her sitting behind her desk, finishing a note on a file. Her expression soft, focused, a faint tiredness in her eyes that made her seem human, not untouchable. I knocked lightly. She looked up, and her face changed. Softened. Warmed. Come in. Her voice always carried a calm strength, like she never needed to force authority. It simply existed around her. I stepped inside, closing the door gently behind me. The office was different at night, softer, quieter, almost intimate. Desk lamp glowing amber, city lights streaming in through the window like moving stars. Papers neatly arranged, her coat draped over the chair beside her, hair slightly loosened from the long day. There was something real in her face at that moment. The kind of tired beauty that comes from responsibility, not vanity. You've been doing exceptional work, she said, not looking at a report, not reading metrics. Looking at me. A warmth spread through me, pride, gratitude, surprise. Thank you, that means a lot. My voice came out quieter than I intended. She leaned back slowly, studying me, like she was seeing more than just an employee. You have potential most people your age never learn to use. And I'd like to help you grow into something bigger. The praise didn't feel like flattery. It felt personal, thoughtful. The room felt smaller suddenly, like the world outside had faded and there were only 2 people left awake in the city. Then she said it, gently, casually, yet with a softness that wrapped around the words. I'd like you to come to my home tomorrow evening. We'll talk about your career path, properly. No distractions here. My pulse stumbled. Professional. Respectful. And yet, something unspoken hung between us, delicate as glass. She smiled, subtle, reserved, almost shy at the edges. I trust you. And I want to invest in you. And in that quiet, warmly lit office, I realized this wasn't just an opportunity. It was the beginning of something I didn't yet understand, but already felt. Deeply I stood outside her house longer than I should have, long enough for the evening air to cool my palms, long enough to wonder if knocking would somehow change my life. Elena's home wasn't what I expected from someone with her level of success. I imagined glass walls, sharp angles, modern steel and marble. But it was warm. Inviting. A stone pathway framed by jasmine shrubs, soft yellow porch light, curtains drawn in a way that made the home feel less like a place you entered and more like a space you were welcomed into. I exhaled slowly and knocked. A moment later, the door opened, and there she was. No press blazer, no office poise. Instead, she wore a soft ivory knit sweater that fell slightly off one shoulder, hair loosely tied, strands framing her face. She looked real. More beautiful in her simplicity than she ever did in boardroom power. Her eyes widened slightly, like she hadn't expected seeing me outside a corporate hallway to affect her too. "You're right on time," she murmured, voice gentle. I lifted the small bouquet in my hand, lilies and baby's breath. I had nearly talked myself out of bringing them, worried it would seem too personal. But now, seeing the way she blinked then smiled, small, surprised, touched, I was glad I didn't listen to my doubt. "For you," I said softly. "Just as a thank you. For believing in me." Her fingers brushed mine as she accepted them. Light contact, yet it sent something warm through me, like a spark that didn't burn but stayed, glowing quietly beneath the surface. "Thank you," she said, voice softer than before. "That's very thoughtful." Then, with a breath that sounded like she was steadying herself, she stepped back. "Come in." Warm lamplight spilled across the entryway, pooling at my feet. The faint scent of jasmine followed us inside, not strong, just present enough to feel familiar, comforting. Her living room felt like her personality, elegant without trying, shelves lined with books instead of trophies, framed photographs of sunsets, and lakes instead of corporate awards. A soft jazz instrumental played somewhere in the background, low and steady, like a heartbeat in the room's walls. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, motioning toward the sofa. "I'll put these in water." I sat, trying not to sit too formally, trying not to look like a guest in a world I didn't belong to, yet unable to ignore how deeply I wanted to belong here, not because of the house, but because of her. She returned with 2 cups of tea, not wine, which somehow made the moment gentler, grounded. She sat beside me, not across, leaving a respectful distance but close enough that warmth radiated between us. "I wanted tonight to be quiet," she said, looking down at her tea before meeting my eyes. "No meetings. No office noise. Just a real conversation." Her voice felt almost like a confession, not just of intention, but of trust. And sitting there, in the soft glow of her living room, the night stretching quietly before us, I realized this wasn't just mentorship or opportunity. It was connection, careful, hesitant, but undeniably real. The kind that doesn't arrive loudly. The kind that grows in the spaces between silence and breath. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. The kind that holds warmth, and questions, and the quiet realization that you are learning someone in a way you weren't meant to, or maybe always meant to, but never expected. That's the silence we sat in. Elena's hand circled her cup slowly, as if the motion steadied her thoughts. The soft jazz hummed in the background, but her living room felt so still that even the air seemed to listen. "You work harder than most people realize," she said gently, eyes still lowered. "I notice things, even if I don't always say them." I wasn't sure why, but hearing that did something to me. It wasn't praise. It wasn't flattery. It was recognition, the rare, quiet kind that reaches deeper than ego. "I guess I'm used to being sort of invisible in rooms," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. "You learn to work silently when you feel replaceable." Her head lifted slightly, like something in those words tugged her attention. "Replaceable," she repeated, tasting the word like it didn't sit right with her. "You are not that. Not in my eyes." Her voice wasn't firm, it was soft, sincere, almost protective. And that made it hit harder. There was a pause, then she exhaled in a way that felt more emotional than tired. "When I was your age," she said slowly, "I pushed myself until I was too exhausted to feel anything. I thought achievement meant never stopping, never needing anyone." She looked away then, toward a small framed picture on the shelf, her younger self, happy, surrounded by people. A life before leadership, before expectations hardened her poise. "And somewhere along the way," she continued, "I learned that success doesn't shield you from loneliness. It just gives you nicer rooms to feel it in." The vulnerability in her voice brushed against something raw inside me. I didn't see the commanding executive anymore. I saw a woman who had carried strength for so long that gentleness felt like a luxury she rarely let herself have. "You don't have to carry everything alone," I said quietly, unsure if I was offering comfort or confessing something deeper. She turned toward me, not abruptly, but slowly, like she wanted to meet the feeling instead of the words. Her eyes were different now, softer, unguarded. Maybe even grateful. "And you," she murmured, "don't have to shrink yourself to fit where you think you belong." The room felt warmer. Or maybe I did. Our hands rested close on the cushion between us, not touching, not reaching, just existing with a quiet tension that felt louder than contact. And then, without thinking, I shifted slightly, not toward her, but toward honesty. "You don't talk like this at work," I said with a half-smile. She mirrored it, barely, delicately. "I don't feel like this at work." It was the first moment where the air between us changed, not into something reckless, but something fragile and real. Affection wasn't spoken. Attraction wasn't confessed. But it lived there, in the truth exposed between two people who had spent so long hiding parts of themselves from the world. Tonight neither of us hid. There are moments when time doesn't stop. It just slows enough for you to feel every second pressed gently against your skin. That's what the living room felt like. A quiet space where two people sat close enough to breathe the same calm, yet far enough to pretend nothing inside them was shifting. Elena cleared her throat first, a subtle sound that felt like a bridge back to safety. "I should show you something," she whispered, almost to herself. She stood and walked toward a hallway closet, retrieving a slim leather portfolio. When she returned, she didn't sit back on the opposite end of the sofa, she sat closer. Not touching, but near enough that the cushion dipped and warmth traveled between us. "These are the leadership development plans I've been drafting," she said, opening the portfolio. "Long-term mentorship tracks, succession strategies, my attempt to build something meaningful." Her voice was steady, but her hands, graceful, manicured, elegant, held a faint tremor. Not nervousness, exactly. Expectation. Hesitation. Human emotion peeking through polished control. She leaned in, showing me pages of notes and diagrams, structure, goals, values. But my eyes kept drifting to her profile, the soft curve of her jaw, the way her lips pressed together when she focused. I didn't mean to look. But sometimes admiration has nowhere else to go. She sensed it, not because I was careless, but because she had always excelled at reading what people tried to hide. Slowly, deliberately, she closed the folder. "We should talk about something," she murmured. The room seemed to breathe with her. "Boundaries," she added softly. "It's important we don't blur things." She was trying to be responsible, mature, professional. It made me respect her more, and made the pull between us feel even more undeniable. "I agree," I said quietly. "I don't want to put you in a difficult position." Her eyes lifted to mine, gentle, searching, conflicted. "You're not. I just want to be sure we're moving carefully. Intentionally." The honesty settled between us like a delicate thread. And then, she stood. "Come," she said, voice even again. "I want to show you the planning board I've been building in my study." We walked down the hallway, the soft hum of evening air filling the silence. The study was warm, lit by a single lamp. Not a workplace, but a room where thought had space to breathe. She gestured to the board on the wall, filled with timelines and handwritten notes. I stepped closer, reading. She stepped beside me. Close. Close enough that I could feel the faint brush of her sleeve. Close enough that the air changed, thickening with unspoken awareness. Our hands, by chance or by gravity, rested near each other on the edge of her desk. Only centimeters apart. Not touching. But that space felt electric, a quiet dare either of us voiced. Then her breath caught, subtle, but real. She turned slightly, and I turned too. Our faces close enough that even speaking would feel like crossing a line. Neither of us moved forward. But neither of us moved away. Not yet. It wasn't a moment of action, it was a moment of almost, suspended like a held breath. A line we felt forming between us, delicate, invisible, alive. And for the first time, I understood that crossing lines isn't always about touching. Sometimes it's just the moment you realize part of you already has. There are moments you don't plan, but somehow your heart prepares for them long before they arrive. We stood in that quiet room, breathing in the same stillness. Neither of us moved, not out of fear, but because some moments deserve patience. They need stillness to form fully, like a sunrise that doesn't rush to claim the sky. Elena looked away first, just for a second, a tiny, human break in her usually unshakable composure. She placed the portfolio gently on her desk, smoothing the leather as if order could anchor her emotions. Sometimes, she began, voice soft, life gives us connections we didn't expect, and we have to decide whether to protect them or avoid them. Her words weren't a confession, they were a surrender. The kind people make only when they trust the listener to handle their vulnerability with care. I swallowed, not from nerves but from understanding. I don't want to pretend I don't feel something, I said quietly. But I also don't want to move too fast or break anything that matters. She turned towards me then, fully, deliberately. Her eyes didn't hold power or authority this time. They held feeling. I haven't let myself feel this way in a long time, she whispered, like the truth itself was fragile. And I'm afraid of wanting something real. There it was. The confession neither of us expected tonight. My voice came out softer than I planned. You don't have to pretend strength with me. Her inhale was barely audible, but her shoulders softened as if a weight had shifted. Then she stepped closer, not invading my space, not demanding anything. Just standing where her heart guided her. The distance between us fell to inches, and time felt different again, patient, quiet, kind. Her eyes searched mine, silently asking a question she didn't dare voice. Is this okay? I nodded once, slow and sure. Only if you want to. She lifted a hand, hesitating halfway, like she was relearning touch, not as power but as emotion, and her thumb brushed softly along my jawline. The touch wasn't bold. It was careful, reverent, almost shy. I felt her breath, warm and unsteady, and I leaned just slightly, not to take, not to claim, but to meet her where she stood. Her voice was barely a breath. Can I? I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My hand rose gently to her wrist, not pulling, just resting, a reassurance, a yes without words. And then she leaned in. The kiss was slow. Almost still. A gentle press, a quiet discovery. No urgency, no hunger, just two souls meeting at a pace their hearts understood. Her lips were warm, hesitant at first, then softening when she felt me return the same tenderness. She pulled back only an inch, eyes closed for a moment longer, like she needed to feel the silence after the touch just as deeply as the touch itself. When she finally opened her eyes, there was something different in them, not victory, not fear. Just truth. I exhaled, a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, and whispered the only thing that felt honest. We'll move slowly. Together. Her hand slid down, fingers brushing mine in a way that felt like a promise rather than a claim. Thank you, she murmured, for not rushing this. I shook my head softly. Something real doesn't need speed. Her smile was small, not the poised work smile, but a real one. Quiet, relieved, tender. And in that moment, the world felt still enough to believe that some beginnings don't have fireworks. They have peace. For a long moment after that first kiss, neither of us spoke. Not because there was nothing to say, but because the moment felt too delicate to disturb. Elena stepped back slowly, her fingertips lingering at mine before she let them fall. The warmth remained, but her breath had changed, steady, yet heavier, as if emotion carried weight on every inhale. "I need a second," she whispered. It wasn't hesitation. It was honesty. She walked toward the window, folding her arms loosely as she gazed out at the quiet night. Outside, the world was unchanged, street lights glowing, leaves trembling in the breeze, unaware that hours had shifted. I stayed where I was, giving her space. Some love stories don't need pursuit. Sometimes what someone needs most is room to breathe, to trust the moment won't disappear if they turn away briefly. She finally spoke, voice soft but steady. "People depend on me. I've spent years learning to carry responsibility without cracks. If anyone found out about this, about us, they'd question everything. My integrity. Your intentions." There was no accusation. Only fear, not a feeling too little, but a feeling too much. "I know," I said quietly. "And I don't want to be a risk to your world. I'd rather walk away than ever hurt your career or your peace." She turned then, sharply, eyes filled with surprise and something tenderer beneath it. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "Don't say walk away. I'm just trying to understand this. To understand us." The tension softened, not dissolved, but reshaped into something honest. Something real. She approached again, slower this time, her hands clasped loosely like she was holding her own emotions together gently, not tightly. "I've spent so long being the steady one, the composed one. I'm not used to wanting someone, and not knowing what comes next," she admitted. "It scares me how natural this feels." I moved closer, respectfully, giving her full room to step away if she wanted. "Maybe the right things are supposed to feel natural," I said. "And maybe we don't have to know the future today." Her lips parted slightly, not to speak, but as if the idea eased something inside her. Then, softly, she reached for my hand. Not to pull me in. Not to hold me close. Just to ground herself, and maybe me, too. "Promise me something," she said quietly. "Anything. That we protect this. That we don't rush, and we don't let the world define it before we do." I nodded, fingers gently closing around hers. "I promise. We move at your pace, our pace, not anyone else's." Her shoulders relaxed, relief washing through her expression like a tide finally finding shore. "And you," she murmured, almost as if surprising herself with the thought, "deserve space to grow, not to be overshadowed by someone else's position." It wasn't a fear, it was care. "I don't feel overshadowed," I said softly. "I feel seen." Her breath caught, a fragile, beautiful moment of emotional transparency. "I see you," she whispered. "More than you know." She stepped closer just enough that our foreheads almost touched, not quite, but close enough that breath mingled, close enough that silence became intimacy again. No kiss this time. No escalation. Just closeness. Soft. Intentional. Safe. Some bonds strengthen not through passion, but through patience. And in that gentle quiet, we chose each other, not loudly, not proudly, but truthfully. A silent starting line neither of us planned to cross so soon, yet neither of us wanted to step away from. Morning light crept across the room like it was trying not to disturb us, soft, golden, gentle. The world outside was waking up fast, but inside her bedroom time moved slower, quieter, like even the universe knew this moment mattered. I woke first. Elena's head rested lightly on my shoulder, her breathing even, peaceful, like she hadn't slept this deeply in years. A strand of hair had fallen across her face, and I brushed it aside carefully, not wanting to wake her but unable to stop myself from touching her, from making sure she was real. Because there was still a part of me that couldn't believe she chose me. Not for work. Not for power. Not because she could. But because she wanted to. My chest tightened in a way I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't nerves anymore. It was something warmer, heavier, steadier. She stirred, eyelids fluttering open with that soft, sleepy confusion that quickly melted into a tiny smile when she saw me. "Morning," she whispered, voice rough from sleep. I'd heard her speak 1,000 times before, giving orders, leading rooms, commanding respect, but this voice, this soft vulnerability, hit differently. "Morning," I whispered back. For a second she just looked at me, studying my face like she was memorizing it. Then she sighed, not in regret, but in relief, like she'd been holding her breath for months and only now remembered how to breathe. "You stayed," she murmured. Like she thought maybe I wouldn't. "Of course I did," I said. "I didn't come here for one night." Her eyes softened, and something undefended flickered in them. Fear, maybe. Or hope. Or both. "People are going to talk," she said quietly. "Let them," I replied. Her hand rested against my chest, not seductively, just gently, like she needed to feel I was real too. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "I told myself I was too old. Too guarded. Too everything." "You're not too anything," I said, surprising both of us with how sure I sounded. "You're just you." "And I swallowed hard. My heart was racing again, not from nerves but from truth. "I want this. With you." She closed her eyes briefly, as if the words physically landed somewhere deep inside her. When she opened them again, there was warmth, but also caution, not because she doubted me, but because she'd lived long enough to know what love could cost. "If we do this," she whispered, "it can't be halfway." "I don't want halfway," I said. "I never did." A breath escaped her, shaky, emotional. She leaned forward and placed her forehead against mine. No distance, no walls, just two people crossed in age and expectation but somehow meeting exactly where they needed to. "So," she murmured, voice almost trembling, "we're choosing this?" "We already did," I whispered. And in that quiet morning light, no titles, no fear, no rushing, just two souls finally stopping the world long enough to feel it, she kissed me again. Not urgently. Not desperately. Just, honestly. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a secret, or a mistake, or a risk. It felt like the beginning. Not every love story follows the rules. Some break them. Some rewrite them. If you felt something, red heart like speech, comment, continue, bell follow for the next chapter.